Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make my new Lucky bracelet. So it may look familiar to you, at least the technique of it, because it's the same way that I made my love letter bracelet, and let me just show you an example of that. But I had done this one on the monster tail, and since then I've had a lot of requests to show it on the Rainbow Loom, so that's what I will be doing in this tutorial. The one I'm going to make is the white and dark green one, and you can see it's just a little bit shorter than the other one because this was my first example that I did and it wound up being a little bit too long for my wrist, so I just eliminated some of the rows in between the clover and the letters, and then I eliminated a row on the end. And I'd also like to note that in the love letter bracelet, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it that clearly, but along the sides I only had 2 cross bands on, and every time I had 2 bands I would take the bottom one off. But now with this one, it's going to be a tighter knit because I have 3 bands on before I take the bottom one off. So it does tend to make the bracelet want to curl up a little bit at the ends, but it's really not a problem at all when it's on your wrist. And I just think it does give it a little bit of a tighter knit look. If you even look within the letters themselves, it just looks a little bit tighter to me. So you can make this using the monster tail or the Rainbow Loom, and as I said, I'm going to show it on the Rainbow Loom today. So this is the pattern that we're going to be following, and for every about 5 or 6 blocks here or rows equals 1 inch, so you can base the size that you need on the size of your wrist. So I'm going to have my loom placed horizontally here because I think it'll just be easier to follow that way. And you do want your loom set up with the pins in a staggered position so they're not in line with one another. And up in the top left hand corner I will be showing little sections of the graph just to help you see what row we're on. And I would like to note that the graph is going to be upside down as we're growing the bracelet, just so you're aware of that. And then as far as your band counts go, you're probably going to need somewhere around 200. So for me, I have 61 green, and then I have the rest white. So I'm going to start on the 4th pin over from the left side of my loom at the bottom here. And I'm taking what I want to be my center color. It's the vertical bands that are going to run up inside of the bracelet, so you really won't see them. So I would recommend whatever your most color is, your base color, to be this. So I'm going from the 4th pin over, and I'm going all the way up to the top. It's the long stretch, you're skipping the middle row. And then I'm going to the next pin over on the right. And again, I'm doing this long stretch. And then one more time, go over to the right here and all the way up. And so this is actually the foundation here that we're building. It's not actually counting as a row. And then what I'm going to do is go to the 3rd pin over from the left in the center. And I'm going to place a band that's going to start on this pin, skip the next 2, and end on the pin after that. And I do want the band to go around the outside of these 2 center pins. So I'm just going to put it alongside. I want it to go along the front side. And that's just what's going to hold the 3 rows together. And so now what I'm going to do is take the bands on the top and pull them down. So all 3 are just moving to the bottom. And you'll see 2 bands on there. So I want to just take the bottom band and pull it over the top for all 3. Just making a slip knot. And then I'm just going to take that off and just wiggle it back and forth a little bit and get it to be snug against the other band. And so now we're ready to begin our first row. And so the first 2 rows are going to be all white. And you do have to double these bands. If you don't double them, it's going to be too loose and you're not going to get the desired look. You can try it and see what you think, but I don't like it because it's just too loose. So I know doubling bands is kind of a pain, and I know that some people have problems with their bands breaking when they try to work with them doubled. So I just would recommend that you use a strong band. For example, I try to use Rainbow Loom because I think they're a better quality if you can use them, if you have them available. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to double the bands, and then I'll show you an alternative way that won't put as much stress on the bands. So I'm taking my first one, which is white, placing it on my hook. I'm going to twist and put it back on so that it's doubled. And I want that to go from top to bottom here over on the left. And this is definitely a longer stretch than, say, if you were doing it on the monster tail. So you can feel the tightness of that. So I'm just going to do this first row in the same way. I'm going to double the band, move over to the right here, and it's going to stretch all the way from the top to the bottom. And then one more time, you're doubling, moving over, and it's going from top to bottom. Now you need to put another cross band on here. So it's going from the left to the right, and again you're making sure that's not going over these two center pins. You want it to go in front of those. And you can just put it on, and if it goes over like that, just take your hook and slide it off of there. And now you're going to take the bands in the back, just like we did when we made the slip knots, and you're going to move them forward. So it's always going to be 2 loops since we doubled this band. And then you want to push down. So I'm going to do that again with another row of all white, but this time I'm going to just show you a little bit of a different way so you don't have to stretch all the way from the bottom to the top. So for now what I'm going to do is just double this band on the 3 front pins. So I'll take my first one, just put it on, twist, and put it back on. That's doubling it. Or you could also do it on your hook if you wanted. You could double it on your hook and then just slip it on there. And then one more time here in the front, you would just place it on, twist, and put it back on. Then you're taking your cross band. It's going from the left all the way over to the right and going in front of those 2 center ones. But now what you're going to have to do is reach underneath of this cross band, and again it's going to put more pressure on this cross band, but if you just get these top 2 bands on your hook, you can pull it backward and then over that cross band and back on. I know it's kind of a little bit awkward to do, but it may make it a little bit easier if you're having trouble with your bands breaking when you're stretching them all the way across here. It's just an alternative method. So you would reach underneath this cross band and then grab these top 2 on your hook that are on that pin, pull them back, and then just loop them over. So it's just really just doing the same thing, just a different method. And then again, on the end here, you're going to have to go, make sure you're going underneath just that top cross band and getting your hook in, grabbing the top 2, pulling it back, and then over. So whatever you find that's easier for you. And so now we have 2 sets of bands on these front pins, and we need to get these vertical bands to pull up through all of them. And then also on the sides here we have 3 bands, and so we want the bottom one to come over the top. I think actually in my last tutorial, every time I had 2 on, I would take the bottom one over, but this time I'm going to do it with 3. So 3 bands are on, so I'll take the bottom one from the ends and pull them over. And now I have to get these middle bands to come up through. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to reach down through all of these rubber bands except for the very bottom one. Push back here, grab it. I'm going to pull it up through. Just try not to put too much pressure on it. It really only has to get just above that pin. And then you can take your finger and slide all the rest of these off. Just don't let go of the one that's on your hook because that's what's keeping them all together. And then you just want to slide that same band right back on. Moving over to the next one, we're doing the same thing. So you're going down through all but the very bottom one, and you can use your finger to pull that down if it helps. And then grab it with your hook, pull it up through, don't lose it off your hook, and then just slide the rest of these off. It is a little bit of a challenge. And then put it right back on. And then one more time, reaching down through, just grabbing that very bottom one, pulling it up, and don't pull too hard, you don't want to snap this. Slide the rest of these off. This middle one's coming off, and put this back on. And so now that we've done 2 rows of all white, we're going to start our pattern. So I'm going to take a green, and I am going to double this. And then I'm just going to put it on this front pin on the left, and it's just going to sit there for now. And then I'm going to take another green, and I'm going to repeat that on the right hand side. So I'm just doubling a band and putting it right on the front. And then I'm going to do my row with the pattern, so it's going to be a green on each of the ends and then a white in the middle. So I'm just doubling and stretching from the back row to the front. I have the white in the middle. And then the green on the right. And then I'm putting my crossband on. So I'm always going to have white in this middle, going across, and don't forget to keep it in front of these 2 center pins. And now the back bands are moving forward. Just make sure when you're doing this that you're not losing either of the bands. You should always have 2, the loops. And now what I'm going to do for where the green is, this doubled band that we just sat on that pin, I'm going to grab the 2 loops, make sure you get them both, and just pull that over the top. It's just giving it that little bit of extra definition around there. I tried several different things to try and make it look like a clover, and I really wasn't thrilled with any of the things, but this was about the best one that I came up with that I liked. And so now I'm going to take 1 single band from the bottom of each of the end pins. And we will have to pull these vertical bands up through, but I like to wait until I have 2 sets on. So for right now, I'm just going to push all of this down and do my next row. So in this next row, we have white on the outside and just green in the middle. So it's green in the middle here. And then white on the end. And then I'm doing my crossband. And the back ones come forward. And I want you to remove the bottom band from each of the sides. And now, since the pins are getting kind of full, I want to bring these vertical bands up through. So you're just pushing back on all but the bottom. It's easy to see when you have two different colors. Again, don't pull too hard on it. I don't want you guys to have your band snap. And then just slide the rest of these off. And you do want to make it pulled up a little bit just so that you don't have any slack in the band, but you don't want to pull it too tightly either. So now here we're just getting the bottom. Gonna slide the rest off. Put it right back on. And then the last one, it's easy to see. And put it back on. So you can see it's starting to grow. You're going to have to force it to grow down in between the rows. And then for this next one, it's going to repeat with the 2 green on the ends. And we also want that extra band that goes, gives it a little more definition. So I'm going to double a green and just leave it sit on this front pin on the left. And then the same on the right. And then I can do my pattern here. So I have white for the middle. And then green on the right. So I definitely know that doubling the bands is more of a pain. It's more time consuming and you have to deal with the tighter bands. But I honestly have tried different things. I tried doing 2 bands at once instead of doubling, and I just wasn't happy with the results. The letters and everything just didn't look like the way I wanted them to. So now the back ones come forward. And then the bottom one from the left and the right. And then I also need to remove the bottom green here, that extra set of bands that we put on. So it's the bottom 2 green. Just slide that over the top. And then the same thing on the right. Slide those off. And now I normally don't get the vertical bands to go up through until I have 2 sets of bands on, but I am going to do that right now just because I want to show you how to extend the vertical bands. So I'm just pushing back on the top and getting the bottom one to come up through. Slide these off and get that back on. Let's do that for all of these. And so when you feel like these vertical bands are getting tight, and I can't exactly tell you how many rows you should do before you extend them, you can feel that there's a lot of tension on them. You can see here now when I lift this off, it's got a little bit of room. I probably could do another row or so, but I just want to show you this now. What you're going to do is take 3 more of your vertical band colors. So I have white, and it's just going to be 1 single band each, and you don't double it or anything. Just put them from the front to the back, and then you're just going to move this vertical band over the top so it slides onto the other one. And then you're going to basically do what you did for the very first row. You're moving the top row down to the bottom. And then the bottom band is going to go over the top to make a slip knot. And then you're taking that and you're just pulling that fairly tightly. You want to make the slip knot nice and small so you don't really see it within the bracelet. And then just put it right back on that pin. And now once you do this, they are going to be longer and they are a little bit harder to work with. Sometimes they don't want to stay on the pin. You have to fight them a little bit more than when they're tighter. So what you can do to try and keep these vertical bands on your pins, if you're having trouble once you've extended them, is just pull your bracelet down as far as you can, down into the loom, and then that's just going to try and help these to stay on a little bit more. So now I'm going to do 2 rows of white, or whatever your background color is. So I am going to just fast forward when I get to the solid rows because otherwise it's just going to take forever. So you can pause your video here. We're just using that same technique as always. Do 2 rows and then I will show you what to do next. And let me just point out too, this is the first time that I pulled the bands up through since I added that extra vertical band. So again, not pulling so hard that you're going to break the band, but just make sure that you're pulling all the way up on that so there's no slack in there. You should be able to see like this, the slip knot where they join. You should be able to see that just above the rows here. And then again, if you're having trouble with these wanting to stay on, just be pulling down here from the bottom and that will help them to stay on the pins. So we're ready to begin our letter L. So for the next 4 rows, it's going to be 2 white from the left and center, and then the green over on the right. So I'll do the first row with you, and then I'll fast forward for the other ones since they're identical. And now my green. Now my crossband. And I'm removing the bottom here on the ends. I'm just going to push this down. I'll wait till the next layer to pull up the vertical bands. So I'm going to do this 3 more times, same pattern with just the green on the right. And now for this next row, it's going to be all 3 green. So this is the bottom of the L. And I'm still always using white for the crossband. Push that down and just loop the sides. And now in between the letters again, I'm going to do 2 solid rows of my background, so I'm doing the white. So again, you can pause here, and I'm just going to fast forward, and then probably when I get done those next 2 layers, we'll need to extend the vertical bands. So I've done my 2 more rows of white, and I'm ready to start the U. So the pattern for this is green on the ends and white in the middle. So I'm going to do this row, and then I'm going to extend the vertical bands. So again, you may have to extend your vertical bands sooner than I do, or later. Just depends on the tightness of your bands. So I'm just pulling these forward. And taking off the sides. And I'll pull these up through. And so now I'm going to extend these. So again, I'm just taking 1 single band, and it does not get doubled, but it's going on the same pins here. Bottom comes over the top. And now the top moves down. And now the bottom one comes over the top. And then I'm just going to pull that fairly tight to make that slip knot nice and small, and put these bands right back on. So here's where they're not going to want to cooperate, of course. Just going to leave them off the hook for the moment, or off the pin, I mean. So now I'm just going to pull down here, and then they should cooperate a little bit better. At least try and get them to stay on the pins where they belong. So you can see we're getting somewhere. You can see our L there. I know this is a long process. So we did 1 row of our U, and we need to do 3 more rows with the same pattern, with the green on the ends and the white in the middle. So again, I'm just going to fast forward here. Now I'm ready to do the bottom of the U, so it's going to be all 3 green. I always feel like I'm fighting with my loom when I'm trying to get these doubled bands on. It's always a tug of war. And on my crossband, actually it looks like I did not remove the bottom layer last time. So I have 3 on here, so let me remove that bottom layer quick on the sides. And now I'm going to add my crossband. And now, again, I'll remove the side and pull these vertical ones up through. So I hope everyone's bracelet is turning out great so far. And if it's a little bit cattywampus, don't worry about it. We can always mess with it at the end. I usually use toothpicks and try and get everything nice and straight and even. Pull down here. So now we have our L and our U, and it's going to be 2 more layers of your background color. So I definitely still have plenty of room on my vertical bands, I can tell, so I'm not going to need to extend them for a little bit yet. So I'll fast forward again. Now we're on to letter C, so that's going to have 1 row of all green. And I'm doing my white cross. I don't know if it feels like it's been as long for everybody watching this as it feels like it's taking me to make this. It's definitely a long one. And I'll remove the right and left. We lost an hour of daylight because it was daylight savings yesterday, or I guess Saturday into Sunday, so I don't know why I feel extra tired today. And now for these next 3 rows, we're going to be doing 1 green band just on the right. Remember, it's going to look opposite of what you think since we're growing it upside down. So it's white, white, and then green on the right. So we'll do that for 3 layers. So I'll do the first one with you. And probably we're going to have to extend our vertical bands again soon, since we have done several rows since the last time we did that. So after I get this one done and I pull the vertical bands up, I'll see if I feel like they should get extended. I probably could do it. I think I might wait till I get another row or two on. If you try to extend them too soon, it's not really a problem, but the bands are so loose then they really don't want to stay on your pins when you're dealing with them. So I feel like I have a little bit more room left in them. And then the outside edges here have to come off. So I'm going to do that 2 more times with just the green on the right, and I'll fast forward. So I am going to go ahead and extend these vertical bands before I start my next row here. So everybody probably knows how to do this by now. You're just bringing them all down. And then making the slip knot. And then tightening that up. So let me just pull down on this. Sometimes you'll find that even though you extended the bands at the same time every time, one of them gets a little bit longer than the other. I guess the band just stretches out a little bit more. So now I'm ready to do the bottom of the C, so it's going to be all green. I feel like my loom is super noisy. Makes all of these creaks and groans and everything. And now I'm going to go ahead and do 2 more rows of all white to separate the C and the K. So I'll fast forward here. Now the first 2 rows of the K are green on the 2 ends and white in the middle. So let me go ahead and do that. And I think one of the nice things about using this technique is that you can really make any pattern or letter that you want. The only letters that I think I had a little trouble making were the letter M and the letter N, just because you're only dealing with the width of 3 rows, so it's a little bit hard to make that configuration, but I'm sure if I put my mind to it I could find a way to work around that. I actually did make a graph of all the different letters of the alphabet, so I think I'll put that up on my Facebook page for anybody that wants to make a name bracelet. Now I'm going to pull up the vertical, and they should be pretty long yet since we just extended them recently. can see this middle one doesn't want to stay on. So let me just pull this down. And I'm going to repeat that same pattern. So it's green on the ends and white in the middle. And then for the middle part of the K, we want to have a white on the left and then 2 green for the center and the right. So I'm going to remove the right and left side here from the bottom. And then again, the verticals come up. And then one more. And now for the next 2 rows, it's going to be the same as the first 2 rows. So green on the outside and then white in the middle. So we're definitely more than halfway done, which is a good feeling. So I'm just going to fast forward here. The next row is going to be the same as this, as I said, 2 greens on the outside and a white. And then I'm actually just going to continue doing the next 2 rows after that as well, which are going to be your 2 solid rows. So before I start the Y, I'm going to go ahead and extend these verticals again. Now we're going to have to fight with them again to stay on. Just pull this down. think it's turning out quite nicely. So for the letter Y, the first two rows are going to be green on the outside and white in the center. The one thing that you might have to worry about with this bracelet, doing the green on white, if you chose those colors, is I found that some of the bands with the green really bleeds onto the white and it discolors your white, which would be upsetting if you spent all this time making this. The Rainbow Loom are pretty good for not doing that, especially I'm using this dark green and it doesn't seem to be having a problem, but I know some of the other brands that aren't as good do that, and maybe Rainbow Loom, some of them do too, but the dark green seems to be okay for not doing that. And then I'm repeating that same color pattern again. So I'll do the sides and then pull these up. And they're definitely going to be on the loose side this time. So I want to make sure as I'm pulling it up that I see the top of that slip knot connection. I know that finding the right tensions on these vertical bands is hard for some people. I know I get comments sometimes that their bracelet isn't laying flat or it's too loose. So you just really have to find that happy medium. And now for the next 3 rows, it's going to be green in the center and white for the outside. So I'll do the first one with you, and then I'll fast forward through the other 2. So I'll just go ahead and make 2 more rows the same. And so that's the bottom of the Y there. And then we're going to do 2 more rows of your solid background. So I'll just fast forward here. And so now we just have the bottom clover to do. So I need to add that green band that's going to be the little accent. So I'm doubling a green and just placing it on the left side and then also on the right, doubling one. And now I'm just going to go ahead and do my regular looping here. So it's green on the ends and white in the middle. And now I want these bottom two green. It's the ones that are just right above the whites. And they should look a little bit looser on the pin. Just pull them up and over. And now we'll do the regular looping, so I'll do the sides, and then I'll do the vertical here. And it feels like my vertical bands are getting a little bit tight, but when you get near the end of the bracelet, you really have to make the decision as to whether or not you should extend your vertical bands, because you don't want to extend them when you're very close to the end of the bracelet, because you're going to have these 3 bands that are then like hanging out, and it's not a big deal, but you just have to loop them around one another so they're not just sticking out, and it could look a little bit messier at the end if you do that. So let me see here. I think I am going to put one more set of vertical band extensions on. Seems like my middle one's a little bit longer than the other ones for some reason. So I'm just going to do the slip knot. Pull down here. Of course, it's not cooperating. It wants to curl up. And for this next one here, we just want a green in the middle. And the bottom comes off of the sides. Sometimes if it's a layer where you're not pulling up the vertical bands, it's easy to forget those sides need to come off. And now I'm doing the other layer with the green on, the clover. So it's the 2 ends, and I need that extra piece, so I'm doubling and just placing it on the left, and then doubling and placing it on the right. And now I'm just going to do my regular pattern here. And now I need these bottom greens just on the 2 ends to come up through, or just over the top I should say. So just make sure you're just getting the bottom 2. And As I said before, they're on the looser side, so you should be able to tell which ones they are. And then we can do the rest here. We'll do the two sides. And then the verticals. So we're definitely at the home stretch here. Just the very bottom of the bracelet to finish up. So I'm going to do my last 2 rows of all white, or whatever your background is. So you can pause it here. Now I'm finished my bracelet here. So what I'm going to do is take the one in the center row on the left. There should actually be 2 bands on there. Get them both and move them down here closest to me. Make sure they both get on there. And then I'm going to take the bottom band, reach down through and just grab that bottom one and pull that off and put this right back on. Do the same thing on the right, moving them to this bottom pin, and then I'm going to reach down and grab the bottom one, pull it up, and put it back on. So as I said earlier, depending on when you added your extension, these might be a little bit looser than you'd like. So I will show you what to do with those after we take it off the loom, so you can tighten those up a little bit. So I'll move the one on the right into the middle, and then I'll move the one on the left into the middle, and I'm going to take the bottom one over the top, and then I have the last 2 here. And so what you can do is just take your hook, and you can just take these bands and sort of just loop them in and out of one another. Like, for example, I'll just start over here, and I'll pull, let me untwist that. I'll pull these 2 through the other one, and I'll just flip it around, and I'll go inside of here and grab these 2 and go through those, and then I'll grab 2 on the opposite side, just so it's not all slanted towards one side, and pull through those. And you can just mess around with it. It's really not a perfect science. However, you can do it just so you get it a little bit tighter so you don't see those bands gaping there at the end. And then you want to take your clip, and you just want to make sure you get through the 2 that are on your hook, or however many you happen to have left on your hook. And I just lost one, so let me get them both back on. I hate it when that happens. So let's try this again. There we go. And so here is your bracelet. And if you think anything needs to be adjusted or straightened out, you can take the time to do that. And if you think any of these look messy, and actually mine looks pretty straight, surprisingly, it doesn't look too bad, I would recommend taking a toothpick and then just going down through here, wherever it looks like it needs a little adjustment. Just carefully, don't stab yourself, but slide the toothpick in, and then just wiggle it or twist and turn the toothpick until they look like they're getting straighter, and then just slowly slide it out. I actually don't have a toothpick right now, or I'd show you. So here it is. I hope that everyone loves their new Lucky bracelets. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook, post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!